Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to My Expanded Universe, a show where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best I know how. Folks, we have two comic book issues I want to talk about today, and they're both from the old Marvel Star Wars series. They're issues 51 and 52, written by David, and I'm guessing how you pronounce his last name is Michelin. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but Michelini, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, he wrote these two stories, and on issue 51, basically it talks about how Luke, Leia, Chewie, the droids, you know, basically the whole gang that's left over at this point, are on a mission to investigate a new super weapon by the Empire. Now this super weapon is called the Tarkin, after Grand Moff Tarkin, who had recently passed away. So they're making this big, huge super weapon, not as big as the Death Star, but a pretty big weapon, and it looks like it's going to be the next newest threat. Now, this issue has the same trouble and contradictions that a lot of the Marvel comic books did at this time, meaning Luke Skywalker is using a lightsaber and you're like, how did he get the lightsaber? In fact, that's one of the big contradictions in the EU if you add up all the Marvel comic books. It seems like during that time during Empire, they just forgot that he lost his lightsaber, and they didn't have a scene in there to show that he made one. I mean, that would be explained in other material, but not in the Marvel series. So that's one of the biggest contradictions in the EU when you count the Marvel comic books. Other than that, there's not that many contradictions within the Marvel comic books, to be honest. But this issue does have the special recognition of being the first appearance of a Gundark. We finally get to see a Gundark, which is really fun. Now in issue 52, they actually just destroy the Tarkin. That's basically all that happens. Now, a little fun fact about this, these two issues were supposed to be about the Death Star 2. Marvel came up with the idea that the Empire would rebuild the Death Star, and they wanted to do a couple of issues where the whole gang went there and they destroyed another Death Star. But Lucasfilm shot them down because that was their story plot for Return of the Jedi. Marvel guessed what Lucasfilm was going to do. And when Lucasfilm heard that story, they outright rejected. They said, no, you can't do that. And I remember hearing an interview with the author going, I don't know why they were so confused, you know, because usually when they submitted stuff to Lucasfilm's like, yeah, that sounds great, or maybe they change a few things, but then they're like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay. And they thought, well, maybe they just don't want us to copycat the first movie. And then I think it was the author. He said when he went to go see Return of the Jedi, he went, oh, that's why we couldn't do the story. Yeah, Marvel called this in advance before the release of Return of the Jedi that the Death Star was going to be brought back, which I thought was pretty cool. So Marvel went back to the drawing board and they came up with this different super weapon called the Tarkin, and Lucasfilm says, yeah, you can do that. And the Tarkin is not as grand as the Death Star, and I think this makes more sense too, because yeah, construct the Tarkin, you know, throw the rebels, you know, off the trail of the Death Star that is now currently secretly being built. So yeah, I would definitely make these other super weapons, you know, more visible to the rebels, and you know, maybe leak a few plans and tell them about it. So this, in the mind of the Emperor, as I'm seeing it, this makes perfect sense. This comic book makes perfect sense. Now, don't go yet, because there's actually one little short story I want to mention, which takes place after the 52nd issue of the Marvel comic books, and you can only find that in the Star Wars Insider Special Edition from 2012. Now, I remember this didn't come with my subscription to the Star Wars Insider, if I'm correct, and I was ticked off. I was like, what the heck? Because there was a short story in there that I really wanted to read by Ryder Wenham called Vader Adrift. And Vader Adrift is basically saying, hey, when the Tarkin explodes, Vader's kind of stranded out into space. How did he get back with the Imperial fleet? And so Ryder Wenham explains that in this short story, which I thought was really cool. Now, I actually got to talk to Ryder about this short story. I said, why did you pick that time? He said, well, at that point, Star Wars Insider wanted to do a short story for their special edition. And so they reached out to Writer to do one, and they said, we wanted about Darth Vader. So instead of just making up a short story about Darth Vader, so, something generic, he said, well, let me go through the old material, and let's see if there's anything that I can connect. Again, Ryder Wenham, you are incredible. So he goes through the comic books, he said, and he said, well, when he was looking through them, he saw that, it didn't explain, we see Vader adrift in space, and the next time we see Vader, he's with the Imperial fleet, but how'd he get there? He said, so that'd be a kind of a good story to tell. So he filled in that little gap there. Now, get it, he wasn't instructed to say, hey, go through the Marvel comic books and give us a story from there. No one told him that. They said, give us a Vader story, and so he found one that connected a few stories. He went, hey, this one connects. Let's make a story that connects other things. Again, this just shows the dedication of these authors and shows why the EU is so fantastic. It is so fantastic because they look to make more connections. And these idiots that say, oh, this stuff is all hodgepodge, they didn't know what they were going to do next. No, they spent their time connecting things. A lot of the authors did. And Rydam basically did this for below scale. They said they couldn't pay him that much, and they offered him a really low deal, which is, to be honest, it's not much more than what Sequart paid me to write that little essay. Now, I'm not complaining. I'm a nobody, so that they paid me money, period, was nice. But, they paid me, bare minimum. And he worked below scale. So his paycheck for that short story and my paycheck, there isn't that much of a difference. I'll just say that. And but he did it because he said, well, I want to help you out. And this actually, he told me, was the last EU fiction that he ever wrote, and I never knew that. So that was kind of interesting too, and sad because Ryder Wenham is someone who basically deserved to write a novel. I think he would have done a fantastic job, especially the man's attention to detail would have really paid off here. Anyway, folks, that's all the time I have for today. See you next time with another video.